12. Missing Formula Number 3. Grandad jumped into the car.
Come on, both of you. We've got some villains to catch.
Alice wasn't going to miss this for the world. She jumped into the back seat, while Dad got into the front passenger seat. They didn't have a chance to fasten their seatbelts before Grandad put the car in drive and sped along the road, leading towards the Blagdens' house on the hill. I can't believe they stole Bum Blaster Number 3. They've no right to just take what doesn't belong to them. They must have been watching us from up on the hill all this time, said Dad.
Don't worry, we'll show them for stealing our Formula Number 3, said Grandad.
It's not our Formula Number 3, it's actually NASA's Formula Number 3,
corrected Alice, but no one noticed. The more worked up Grandad was getting, the faster they were going. In no time at all, they found themselves by the Blagdens' gate. Behind it led a long driveway that snaked up the hill to the house Alice had seen through the telescope. Grandad stopped the car, and Dad jumped out to open the gate. Oh, it's no good! It's locked! Yelled Dad, rattling the gate. Both Alice and Grandad got out of the car to take a closer look. While Dad and Grandad stood by the gate, Alice noticed a little nook in the hedgerow. She pushed on it gently, and it fell in, forming a gap.
Look, there's a gap in the hedge. I think I can squeeze through, said Alice.
Great work, Alice. See if you can get through, said Dad. With one push, Alice fell through the gap and onto the snowy ground of the Blagdens' property.
I'm through. The gap's bigger than I thought, said Alice.
OK, we're coming through, said Dad. First, Dad's head appeared through the gap. Then came the rest of his body. Next was Grandad's turn. His head, his shoulders, and then his belly came through the gap in the hedge. Right, let's go get them, said Dad.
Roger that,
said Grandad. And with that, the Appleby started their march up the hill towards the Blagdens' house. As they neared the house, the rear garden came into view. Lady Melantha Blagden stood in the middle on a wooden step, with Gawk fussing around her. But wait, she had on a parachute, and so did Gawk. And Alice's packet of seeds and notebook were on a table right next to Formula Number 3.
Those are Auntie Laurie's and Uncle Paul's parachutes, said Alice.
That's when Gawk turned towards them.
Hey, you! This is private property. Get off this land immediately, or we shall call the police, cried Gawk.
You've stolen Formula Number 3. That's ours, and we're not leaving until you give it back, said Dad.
It's actually NASA's Formula Number 3,
corrected Alice in a quiet voice. I've had enough of this. Give us our things back, said Dad, marching towards Lady Blagden and Gawk. Cool as a cucumber, Gawk produced a little silver gun from his waistcoat pocket.
Not so fast,
he said, pointing the gun at Dad. Dad stopped dead in his tracks and put his hands up. Alice and Grandad raised their hands too. That's when Lady Melantha turned to address them.
I think you'll find we obtained the goods through the correct legal procedures. Your Formula Number 3 is now my Formula Number 3. Now, if you don't mind, I've some relatives in Austria I plan to visit. But that's not our Bum Blaster. That's NASA's Number 3 rocket fuel, said Alice in a louder voice. Nonsense, you little brat. I've seen first-hand what you have, snapped Lady Melantha.
We've been watching you,
confirmed Gawk with a smirk, pointing at the telescope in the nearby house. Alice recognised the telescope. It was the same one she had seen from the garden.
Your Bum Blaster is a miracle, or should I say my Bum Blaster. When I grow those Kirkham chili seeds, everyone will want Bum Blaster. When people fly with Bum Blaster, it'll be cheaper and more convenient than using an airplane, and so much better for the environment. I'll be rich.
Rich,
echoed Gawk.
Richer than you all, and I will buy the whole of England. I will be queen, if that's what I wish, and bring you stupid little simpletons under my rule once and for all,
smiled Lady Melantha.
Queen Melantha,
cried Gawk, looking up at her in awe.
Let them have it,
whispered Grandad to Alice and Dad. Are you sure? I don't fancy having Melantha as our queen, said Dad.
I'm sure. Somehow, I don't think she will ever be our queen. Also, if it is NASA's rocket bum blaster, it'd be best if you weren't around when they drink the formula and turn into human rockets. Now, if we could just sneak off and leave them," whispered Grandad. But he was interrupted before he could finish.
What are you whispering?
Snapped Gork, collecting himself and pointing the gun at them with a look of suspicion. "Oh, we were just saying, Your Majesty, that if you think it's your bum blaster, you might as well have it and use it as you wish," said Dad. Lady Blagden smiled victoriously.
"Quite right. I knew you'd come to your senses. There's no denying that when you simpletons knew I was going to be your ruler, you wouldn't question me further. You couldn't. Now, come on, Gork. Let's get our royal bums moving."
Yes, Your Majesty. Coming, Your Majesty,
crowed Gork. He strapped on his parachute, and he and the lady each took a big swig of Formula Number 3.
"To Austria!"
cried the lady triumphantly.
"Quick, let's get out of here,"
said Grandad, and with that the Applebys took off down the hill. Alice could swear she heard numbers being counted down from somewhere. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. As Alice, Grandad and Dad reached the gate at the bottom of the hill, 2 gigantic rocket booms rang out, one after the other. Although they were a little distance away, Alice could clearly see everything happening at the top of the hill. "Broom!"
"Wah, wah, wah!"
yelled Lady Melantha, flapping her arms frantically, and in a flash she shot 1,000 feet high into the air, flames leaping from her backside. Gork wasn't far behind. This time his arms were flapping like a sped-up duck. He, too, had flames shooting out of his bottom. Broom! The smoke that emanated out from their bottoms left tremendous, black, billowing clouds that covered the entire Blagden house. "Do you think they'll make it to Austria?" asked Alice innocently. "Austria? They're going so fast, they're more likely to land in Australia," said Dad.
"Australia? Judging by their trajectory, it's more likely to be an asteroid," said Grandad, looking up. The Applebys followed the black vapour trails, watching Lady Melantha and Gork getting smaller and smaller in the sky, until they were little more than tiny black dots in the distance. "Come on, my neck's beginning to hurt," said Grandad.
"Hold on, I need to get my notebook and the Kirkham bum blaster seeds they took," said Alice.
Before Dad or Grandad could stop her, Alice ran back up the hill, through the smoke, and to the table. There she found her notebook and a little packet of seeds she had made. Then she came running back down the hill to Grandad and Dad. Then they all squeezed back through the hole in the Blagden's hedge and went home.